Those reactions there as well, my colleague there gathering. Just a little bit more political reaction with regards to that address by the president. My big question also still becomes, though, we've had the RDP plan, which of course was started however long ago now, just after we retained and got freedom with regards to our reconciliation here in South Africa. And we're still speaking about development and housing and the reconstruction thereof this many years later. That sentiment has still come to the fore. Well, some things never change indeed. Martin Kingston, though, joins us now as we get to perhaps unpack a little bit more of this on the business side of things. Martin, perhaps let's try and get your reaction to the president's address there as well. Did it offer you anything of substance? I mean, the four main critical points are nothing we haven't heard before.
No, well, we welcome it, Arabella. We've obviously been involved, as the president said, intimately in the engagements with government, with Labour, and indeed with civil society over the past several months. All of the interventions we agreed to. The question is whether we can afford them, whether they're implementable in an urgent time frame. Obviously, the economy has been devastated not only by COVID-19, but was already threatened by the downgrade. We were in a recession before COVID-19 arrived. And we have no time to lose. Urgency, as he stressed at the end of his speech, is the order of the day. And we're going to have to mobilize resources from across all social partners, business in particular, experience and skills, as well as capital, for viable, credible opportunities, large and small, if we're going to be able to pivot the country onto the inclusive growth trajectory that he was talking about.
Yeah, in doing so then, he speaks about the employment stimulus that he's trying to touch here as well. 800,000 employment opportunities to be created in the months ahead, something that is supposedly already been done before. Have we seen the fruits of any of that 100 billion rand over 3 years that he said would have already been put in place to create jobs?
Well, we need to be very careful about managing expectations under the circumstances. We've lost 2.2 million jobs, we know, in the formal and informal sectors in the first 6 months of this year alone. We don't know what the ramifications are going to be for the third and fourth quarters of this year. We know that COVID-19, as the president said, is going to be with us not only for the balance of this year, but indeed for the foreseeable short and maybe even the medium term. And we're going to have to live within those circumstances and adjust our working practices accordingly. And in those circumstances, it's very difficult to create sustainable jobs unless we do so in a manner that is coupled with fundamental structural reform. We're thrilled that he has given the emphasis that he has to those structural reforms. We have long, as a business, been saying that this is absolutely essential if we're going to be able to bolster the levels of confidence that are needed for investment, because, of course, growth follows investment. And jobs follows growth. That's the only way that it's going to happen. And we think that the private sector, large and small, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, as he said, is a key driver to that economic level of sustained activity.
Yeah. Martin, the president then highlighted, he wants to go on a big industrial growth drive, if you want to call it that. We make more than 170 billion rand in capex from the investment forums that was invested in a few projects. But one of the things that I thought was quite significant was we import 1.1 trillion rand worth of goods. And if 10% of those were manufactured in South Africa, it could add 2 percentage points to GDP. If we know that, why have we not done it yet?
Because I think we've not been organized and integrated as a country within the private sector, between the private sector and the public sector. We've demonstrated, actually, most recently in the context of PPE, that when we work collectively, in that case, business, government, and indeed Labour, we're able to pivot into localization of manufacturing of PPE, when at the beginning of the pandemic, we were actually importing all the PPE that we thought we required. The same thing can be applied across swathes of the economy, and we've committed as part of the action plan to identifying those areas where we can indeed localize and industrialize, but it needs to be on a viable basis. We need to scale it appropriately, not only for domestic consumption, but also for export, particularly into the rest of the continent.
Yeah. Did he put and apply enough pressure on the SOEs, do you think? I mean, he speaks about the continued split up of Eskom as something they're continuing to do. At the same time, they're trying to secure energy as well for the next 2 years. Did that give enough impetus to trying to build and ensure that there is enough power supply to grow this economy?
Well, we think he indented appropriately on SOEs, on Eskom, and on the energy sector. That's clearly at the forefront of everybody's minds. We need to have reliable, predictable, and indeed affordable energy from all sources, particularly recognizing that we're moving into the just transition and away from carbon-heavy consumption into a much more appropriate form of energy generation and consumption. And that is obviously the order of the day. I suspect it's going to take much longer than we would like to be able to give effect to the restructuring of Eskom and indeed the energy sector. But we have signed, as you know, we've committed to a social compact for Eskom, ADNEDLAC, all of the partners concerned. We now need to put that into practice. This is all, of course, about implementation. With respect to the other SOEs, we think there's much more that needs to be done and could be said. We have consistently maintained that those SOEs that are not systemically important need to be migrated responsibly off the state balance sheet. He talked a little bit about that when he talked about even listing some of them. And those that need to be retained and need to be appropriately capitalized and given the requisite skills, capabilities in terms of management board and indeed an appropriate fit-for-purpose strategy to support the economic recovery.
Martin Kingston, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon as well, getting your reaction then and Business South Africa's reaction then with regards to the President's Reconstruction and Economic Plan. Let's head on over back to Parliament.